Warm greetings to everyone. This is Priyam, and welcome to the Art Talks on the master artist Sukhvir Sanghal. He was known for his wash paintings. His unique ideas and themes have left a forever impression in our hearts. Today, we are going to talk about his teaching ways, his painting styles, and many other interesting facts about him. And it is a privilege for me to have a very learned person with me today, Dr. Anima Chakraverty. She has enormous experience in the field of English language education, and she also happens to learn art from Professor Singhal for almost a decade. A pleasure to have you here, Anima ji. We
Thank you
want to
very
know,
much.
we want to know more about you and how did you happen to meet Professor Sanghal?
Well, the less said about me, the better it is. You've already said enough. However, I was walking home one afternoon when I suddenly saw the board, and the board said Kala Bharti, and I was inquisitive. I was already interested in art, and as a result, I was inquisitive. I wanted to go up. So I came up, met Professor Singhal. However, he could see I was looking at the paintings more than anything else. So he told me, get up and see the paintings first, then talk to me. And though I had not done anything like that before, I thought I'd learn something new. And I asked him if I could join his class. He agreed. And promptly the next day, I joined the class. And the class probably was so interesting that I stayed on for a decade. As you know, I had 2 breaks, but I did stay on.
Yeah, that's great. Can you also tell us your experience with him as a teacher, as a guru?
As a teacher, he impressed me a lot. The first reason being, I was already a teacher myself. And being a teacher, very naturally, you look up at someone whom you learn from. And that is exactly what happened to me. I found him excellent as a teacher for many reasons. And one of the reasons being his patience, his empathy with all his students. And in that class, we were students of different age groups, but he could handle all of us together. And I don't think any of us felt, sort of differentiated or felt bad with each other. The age difference, I think, ranged from 6-year, 7-year-old children. In fact, even you were a kid when you joined the class. So naturally, it made no difference to us. That was one thing. However, the individual attention he gave each one of us separately. Naturally, my demands and the others' demands would have been very different. And if I questioned him, he would answer my question as well as the other person's questions. And of course, my questions obviously were far more difficult or more crazy. With a little experience, what happens is naturally your questions are more provoking. The younger children don't ask so much. Yeah, so naturally, that was one thing, is the questions. The second thing, he gave us a good insight into materials. He told us what pencil to use, how to keep our pencils, and how to use the quality of the pencil, the variety of the pencil, and the way we did our drawing. He was very careful, or he insisted we did not sort of erupt the paper at all while drawing and erasing. And with a complete drawing, he took us the next step further. Without the drawing, he was never satisfied. And very often, we did the drawing even twice. I remember in my case, I did the drawing even twice, but we took it very well. Generally, today, students don't like that kind of corrections. But it was not a problem. He made you draw it roughly, and then he took it on to the fair paper. So, which was never a problem, or we didn't feel bored with it, or we didn't feel we were doing something uselessly. We were all very apt into it, and we were very good at doing the drawings again and again. That was not the problem. The next thing was the colors. He told you exactly what paints to buy. After that, he told you how to mix the colors. And then with him telling you, you also experimented. It wasn't left at that because the age difference was there between me. So I always like to, little bit of experiment somewhere, and he would catch you. He said, no, you haven't done what I've asked you to do. So naturally, you knew that he was very thorough with his work. Then his representations of dawn and dusk were so evident with us that when I started out with landscaping. And he could tell immediately, okay, go ahead. We did worry each other once in a while. But that was okay. That was okay because my first landscape he made me do is from your balcony. He said, okay, what you see, and compose it into a drawing that you would like to get in painting later. And see, when he tells me to compose something, and as a teacher, when I teach writing, I use the same term, composing. Okay, so there was a lot of similarity in the work we did. And since that similarity was there, the interest definitely was far more. The interest was definitely there. So these are some of the things that I found. His empathy with the students. Now, when you begin teaching, you're a little impatient. So I learned, and probably that is the heritage I've taken from him, his patience. It has really grown in me, and through my years, I think my students know me for a very patient teacher. And that's one thing. And then, see, because he was very gentle with us, I learned to be gentle with my students. I mean, you can tell a student something is incorrect, but you need not be harsh. And therefore, as a teacher, I felt I picked up a lot from him. And I mean, that has become a part of myself rather than anything else.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anima, for sharing the little details about how he told the students to, starting from the pencil to the colors and, the patience that you learned from him, and you passed it on to your students. That was great. And I really know that, he worked on a different span of works, like he did wash paintings, he did tapestries, he did landscapes, and he even did watercolor on wood, on silk, and he did some sculptures and even fine art on leather. So what is it that you were specifically interested in and you learned from him during that big 10 years?
Listen, initially I joined, and when I saw his work, I was a little diffident because I couldn't do human beings and I couldn't do figures at all at that time. Okay, I was interested in landscape and I was interested in a lot of flora. I wanted to do a lot of flowers, if you notice, and I have done some of my best floral painting has been done with him. Moreover, my landscapes too gained some kind of specialization because they were very raw before that, if I'd ever tried them on my own. However, my landscape was something that I really loved doing. Apart what I did from your balcony and at home, my balcony, he did send me to the site too. And twice or thrice he thought that will deter me or I will become diffident, but I don't go into the residency. On the third occasion, he told me, don't go alone, take someone from home. I could understand his concern. He said, I would have come with you. Oh, but the thing is that his timings and my timing, because I was working. So I had to go really early in the morning or late in the, in the evening, afternoon kind of thing. So our timings never matched. But then I went and he could tell exactly from my drawing what I had picked up. And that was a specific part. If I picked up the entrance gate, if I picked up the turrets, if I picked up the museum section, he would tell from what I had drawn. So he said he need not go. He knew what I was doing. Now, it was not what I picked up that was important for me. It was the composition. And it was that composition that he said gave life to the picture. So after he saw my keen interest, of course, he gave me further privileges that I could sit at home and do things. Okay, then he gave me some privileges. He realized I was interested. Therefore, there was a keen sense of observation. And today, no teacher will have that keen sense of observation the way he had it. In fact, I'll quote you some of the other examples at a later stage when you will see things were very different. We had conversations on very different levels compared to most other students who were there during my time. Because at the second part of it, the person who was there with me was a classmate, but she never talked either to him. And the way I got sort of familiar, maybe the professional closeness, maybe the closeness because of our art, but we did get much closer. Now, at a point, there was about a year probably, when suddenly I'd done a lot of landscapes and I'd done lots. So he said his speciality wasn't something else. And he actually made me divert and get into his way of looking at things. And that was a learning process for me. That was another learning process for me. Yes, I worked that way with him for the next few years because the stages were very different. He made me do all the, the body parts separately. Then he made me combine it. In certain cases, I said, no, I can't do this. This is horrible. I can't do this. And then he would say, okay, take your time, take your time. Go outside and just stand outside. And then before I could want to come in, he'd, come back, not draw. So very often it happened that I would say, no, 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 I can't do this. But see, there was one thing. He never pressurized me. He realized I did not want any deities in my work. And he never pressurized me on that issue. And because his third painting, I think, was something with the deity for every student. But I was the only one who was allowed not to do it. I told him clearly, this is something I will not touch. Though, I mean, later you'll understand other things too. But this is one of the things I had to frankly say, I will not do this. Sorry. And so he didn't say a word at that time. But there were other times when he expressed himself. I think when time went on and he understood me better, he did say things to me, which both of us smiled at, because that was the personality coming out of the work. Okay, after that, I did go into his kind of work and I enjoyed it. There was no way that I can say that I was not happy doing it. Yes, but I thought I learned something new, but I got much more than that new. That is what had happened with me, with my landscape painting. Then I went into the wash painting totally. I did see and observe the tapestry that was there in the classroom. And of course, that I thought I could never do because it had too many ramifications, which I didn't think I was capable of at all. So I never even suggested that to him. Okay.
Yeah, so I see that you were interested more into landscapes, and he sort of, made some interest, he developed some interest in you for the figure drawing. Yeah, that is great.
Definitely.
We want to know more about, his painting style, and how many paintings did you make under his mentorship?
Listen, the question, if you ask me how many paintings, probably I've done over a dozen landscapes, a lot of florals, and maybe more than 25 to 30 wash paintings. Okay, now the reason was not only the span. The reason was he accepted my drawings very fast. It wasn't the coloring as much, but he accepted the drawing because it had to go through the process. It had to go through that process, so that the acceptance of drawing, or once or twice he told me, okay, you tell me what you want to draw. Maybe I was at that age that I could suggest something. That was one thing. The second thing was, very often he would tell me, if you have something in mind, tell me. And once or twice I brought photographs which I had taken in different countries, of course, and he accepted it. He said, okay, but change the composition. And we did that. When I come to one of the other photographs I'll talk about, or the painting, and if you won't believe this, I used one of these paintings as the cover of my book. Okay, so because the publisher also wanted something new. So I said, why not then? Why not try it out? Now, if you talk about his style of painting, yes, the meticulous drawing was the first thing, maybe a rough copy of the drawing, a fair copy of the drawing. But here, when it comes to drawing in fair copy, there was a kind of paper also he expected us to have, so that it would take a wash. Because an ordinary paper would never take a wash, or the paper that you pick up in the house will not take a wash. So he did say that to us, that we needed specific paper. Once all that done, the primary level of coloring done, and a lot of the work gone into the work, then he would want it washed. Now, you wouldn't believe this, but the first time I had to do a wash, I thought the paper will dissolve in the water. Actually thought in my mind, I said, okay, sir is telling me to do this. I'll try it out. It's okay. But I did not expect that paper to remain. Okay. However, it did. And then after those 30 minutes, when we took that paper out and we put it on a board, we had to wait for it, for the shine to go, which told us that it is dry enough to work on it. Very often during that 30 minutes, the water would wash away some of the extra color, or the harder tones, as I would call it. The water would wash away the higher tones, and then he would tell us step by step what to do. how to make a wash, how to use initially water and light colors to go over it. Then that not being enough, he even told us how to use white with the basic color that we had used and then wash with that, so that the sort of synchrony would build. It would be synchronized, and there would be a finer tonality in the painting rather than anything else. So much so that if I think of it today, it seems no one can copy my paintings. If someone would like to try, they can never copy, because they don't know the stages that it has gone through. And probably without the procedure and the stages, you cannot have a duplicate piece. You can never have a duplicate piece, even if it is mine, okay? And leave alone his work, so I don't think anyone can copy. And then it is A, the composition of the drawing, the B is the coloring. He wants to give it a particular look. He wants to give it a dusk or a dawn look. Very naturally, what is going to happen is that the shades and the colors will go accordingly. There's certain combinations which we had not even heard of. If you've done a little theory in art, we would talk of primary colors and secondary colors. But he would go beyond those secondary colors. Because naturally, when you mix and blend the colors, the tonality is very different. And his tonality is pretty original, I would feel. I mean, I know he has picked up, it's a Bengal style, and a lot of people would say, I think it's his original style, to be very honest. He may have started out, see, we all start out from somewhere. Unfortunately or fortunately, I have seen painting in Japan, I've seen painting in Korea, I've seen paintings in Shantiniketan, but his style is absolutely. And his working with the student is also very different. Invariably, he took a very personal interest. And he did tell us the finer nuances. He answered all our questions and our doubts, which probably no one else will do. See, this is basically, it was not my vocational subject, but my interest naturally made me look into things. It was still, like I say, not my vocational subject. I mean here that I wasn't going to take it as a profession. So very naturally, I took it as just pure interest. And what I learned, I can never thank anyone but him for it. Because a part of personality, the work or the understanding of a painting, which is very important. See, you can't always be an artist, okay? But I can appreciate other people's work. And that's one thing that I did learn is appreciation. And the second thing that I did learn is everything else. If I go anywhere, the first thing I want to visit is all the art galleries. I want to see what it is, at least what they are doing. And at points, I've also visited other art teachers who have totally disappointed me. In the sense, before my experience with Professor Singhal, I mean, okay, you liked everything. Or you just didn't like anything. Okay, I depended on your mindset, but which was a mindset which didn't know anything. Okay, once you learn with him, you feel you know something. And I think that is a great tribute to him. Now, before I go on to this, there is one thing I would love to say too. This concept of dilute colors and the sheen they take on, or the finality they take on, is very difficult for any artist without not only patience, you need a very deep sense of observation. If you are not observant yourself, you will not be able to do it. I mean, that is what I see in his painting. His technique of wash beautifully creates a story. He talks of composition, but it actually finally, the paper has a story on it. And the subtle coloring is also very meaningful. It is the subtle coloring that is very important and meaningful, that reflects the person. All the coloring, the mode, the tonality, after all, reflect the person. And this is what tells me about the artist, Professor Singhal himself, that his mystique, charisma, is what is very essentially Indian. It would not be anything else but Indian. His technical soft colors indicate a unique concept, which can only be approached by him and no one else, let me tell you, and no one else. And therefore, this is an inherent skill which he not only developed, he mastered, and he tried to give all of us. See, there is a teacher can give to a certain extent. It is after that upon the learner. If we accept or we don't accept, or we understand or we don't understand. So that is exactly what happened with me, is what I understood. Yes, there are things which I didn't understand. Probably I was not meant to understand at that time. Probably if he was still there, I would have still been a student. See, so you can't tell. See, these are things I cannot tell. But probably at this point in my life, see, I just started my career then. And today when I'm talking to you, I probably retired from my primary career. So there has been a long span, and that I'm talking to you after. And it's a real pleasure talking about him at this point in time, because they bring back very good memories of my youth or of a young adult at that time. Okay, shall we go on then?
Sure.
Before I get very emotional.
Yeah, you've explained in detail the wash technique that you learned from him, and also that there was a long gap in the time that you learned, and like currently.
And today,
So,
yeah.
do you still do paintings or no?
Listen, I still do a lot of sketching and drawing. Yes, I do paintings too, but very minimal. Very minimal, especially my career has been very hectic. So I have not had this chance. However, the last part of my career, after I retired from Isabella Thoburn College, I joined a publishing house as a senior editor. And there they asked me to edit. And once or twice I couldn't help it, but I edited the pictures too. And this again is another big tribute to him, which I did not realize I had got. But we had a group of artists there for the pictures in books. And I don't know, spontaneously, I'm supposed to edit the writing, but I spontaneously edited some of the pictures in the book, and I actually scored them out, nonsense, and sent it back. The whole lot came to me. And I thought they're going to, sort of argue it out with me. I was patient and I was prepared. However, they were very polite, because seeing my age and probably seniority, they were polite. And they asked me, what should they do? And you won't believe this. I took up a pencil and I redrew all the pictures in that book. And that was for class 4 or 5. And they were shocked. They gave me a standing ovation. Why? That again, Professor Singhal, not me. The proportion. They said, ma'am, your proportion is very good. And then I thought to myself, where did I get this? I remember the way he taught us how with your eyes to measure something. See, initially it was a pencil. He said, okay, with a pencil. Yeah. And then it became, do it with your eyes, put that pencil down, and now do it with your eyes. Because the proportion he taught me for the body of a human being, at that time, see, it didn't appeal to me, to be very honest. I used to come home and either measure myself or my mother. I said, Dikhao, I want to measure. And they would wonder, what the hell are you doing? But then that day, I saw how that proportion had really affected me mentally, and I still had it in me. That means as a teacher, if someone can leave that kind of an impact, that must have been an excellent teacher.
Yeah, that is true. Do you also want to talk about any favorite painting of yours from his collection?
Yes, I had two very favorite paintings, but at that time, I don't remember the names as such, okay? One was in a very beautiful young woman, okay? And she was ethereal. I mean, it was like something that was out of the world. Okay, her poise, what she was wearing, how she looked, aquiline features, she was really out of the world. And that purity was coming out. It was not only the environment, but the purity that was coming out, which really impressed me at that time. But there was another picture which we lingered after. And that was of the Taj Mahal. It had two people in it. And it was the Taj Mahal was in the background. And it was in black and white. And it got sold during my time because I always thought, when I have money one day, or the financial aspect of it, I will surely ask. At that time, I didn't even have the courage to ask. I could come every day and look at it for 5 minutes and that's it. But I couldn't do. And when it vanished, you don't know how sad I was. I was really, really very upset when it got sold off. I was really upset about that.
The first painting that you told about, that is the dream of a betrothed virgin. So there's a lady who he thinks about how her husband should be and what qualities, what are the characteristics that she wants in her future husband. So this is what I think the theme of that painting. And the second one that you mentioned, the Taj Mahal one, yeah, that one was sold, I think, in the exhibition that he did in 1992. So yeah, that was revived.
For an exhibition, it was during my class time. That time there was no exhibition. But it was sold because I did accidentally ask you that you're a little more reserved with your teacher. I said, where's that painting gone? Then he told me no, it's sold.
Okay.
And I probably he did not realize because I had never voiced it. And neither did anyone else because at that time I was a little more reserved. Except for talking to Professor Singhal, I rarely talked much to anyone else. So no one could have realized why I said it, unless he did. That's all. No one else. And actually, my sister had joined after me for a very short while. So she had also her eyes on that painting. That is why both of us had decided we'd buy it jointly. But it never happened.
But yeah, that's gone. I don't know.
It's gone. And I don't even know who it went to. Otherwise, I'll go and steal it now.
Okay. Is there any story that you want to share in his memory and how he inspired you as a person and as a guru?
Okay, as a person, there was a lot of inspiration. In the sense, I will tell you at this point, a couple of things that he talked to me. In fact, in my case, there are very many more things than just my sojourns. Okay. Okay. He inspired me because of his patience, the way he could handle all his students of different age groups. Then there was another thing that we could relate to each other because maybe our subjects were, very close in very different ways. Because actually at a point, they say the culture of the country comes from his art, literature, and music. So, well, he was one side of it and I was the other side of it. Okay, so because my language and literature come in together. And at that time, I had just finished a course in music too. So naturally, I was very much into it, though my background was very different. I had come from a totally science background and both my parents were medicos. So naturally, there was no association at home with art. And here I was the only person. And therefore, my art talk was always with sir only. That wasn't a conversation in my home at all. Because naturally, the conversation here was more, okay, with science. And of course, if you don't know science, you don't know anything. Was the concept there. But getting back to sir, let's look at this. He had a lot of empathy with his students. Which as angry as you are, you cannot express it with your students, with your class. I at that point was dealing with much larger classes. Naturally, we had around more than 60, 70 students in each class. And so naturally, sometimes you tend to be angry, but you had to I understood how to keep it to myself. And the other thing that he inspired me was he had his natural ways of telling you things. He would never raise his voice. He would never, at least at the time when I met him, he would never raise his voice. But his eyes were very expressive and meaningful. Now, for the example of this meaningfulness, if I tell you, you will laugh also. After my landscapes, the comment I got was, a landscape can have people. Why aren't there any people in your landscapes? Okay, wait, listen. Then once he tried to put in a person, okay, and I took it off. With the paintbrush, I took it off. Huh? He looks at me and he smiles. There is some problem. Okay, I smiled. I knew that about myself and I too smiled. Then we left it at that where it came to the landscape. Then he noticed another thing. He said, okay, instead of people, you put in a dry tree somewhere or a drying tree. Why is that so? Look into yourself. And till then, I had started realizing these things already. And I just smiled at him. But, there was a very odd kind of expression. So I asked him, what does he mean? I wanted him to explain further, but he didn't say a word. He did not say a word. He kept smiling at me. And this happened a second time too. This happened a second time. This I know was a personality thing, which you can see it today. Okay, the second thing that happened with me when I was doing these wash painting, at one point he said, you've done too many women, you've done this, you've done that. Why don't you try out a child? Okay, so I said, okay. Then he said, a male child. I said, okay. He was okay with the drawing. But when we finalized it, he had such a quizzical look on his face, I can't tell you. At that point, I asked him, why? You won't even guess. Because from a child, is totally deformed. Deformed in the sense, he looked like a dwarf. Okay, and so he laughed at me despite the corrections. He couldn't change it. But he says, you've really, I don't know what you've done. No, but then again, see, whether it's writing or painting, it reflects a person's personality. And that was my personality coming out there, which he could not control. That is the difference when you have adult learners. That was a personality, which naturally he had no idea of my background, apart, of course, where I lived and where I was coming from. But that was all. That was all. And the interest he saw in me, that was, of course, a very interesting part of it. But this was very correct reading of the person. And maybe he read many other people, but they never talked about it. In my case, I would ask him straight away. And then he would laugh. He said, I'll tell you tomorrow, everything. But it would never come out of him. So sometimes it is interesting to know that, okay, you can, through certain arts, writing, tell more about a person or know more about yourself too as a person. And this is something I saw in his keen sense of observation. See, if you don't take personal interest in your student, you don't have a keen sense of observation, how do you tell these things? So this was, I felt, a very natural part of it, the psychology and the philosophy that he was developing through his works too. The dusk at the dawn, he could get me to do. He could not get me to do something that was very different or something that was bright. He could not get me to do. So that means he could tell a person, and the fact that he never insisted I did something that I didn't want to, he knew it won't work out, like that child. He knew it won't work out. But probably he thought that was the lowest significance, because he tried it a second time in making a picture on a half page with two people. Then he pointedly said, a sister and a brother. Okay, before that, we had not decided who it is. But in this composition, he said, make a sister and a brother. The sister is older, and the sister is teaching her brother. And there was a book open between them. That worked out better. So see how the composition also affects your mindset. And this is, I would say, is his personal reading finally. You may or may not know, you may or may not realize, but certain things there are that help you to realize finally what is happening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anima, for sharing all those stories and sharing your experiences and little details. And it's astonishing that you remember so many minute details from a time long back. And I
I think in the 90s, I was there with him till the 90s. I did have a 2-year gap, but the 2-year gap, 1 year was in South Korea. And there I took a 3 months Oriental painting class for fun. Listen, I cannot tell you about my experience because I'd already done part nearly 4 or 5 years with Professor Singhal. My God. That was more of a glamour world.
Oh.
Okay, the art class was really glamorous. Okay. The paintings that they made us do were real large and mass scale. Okay. In my case, I did have a disadvantage there because I had no language. They speak Hangul and I didn't speak Hangul at all. Okay, I had gone there for teaching linguistics and that too English, but I joined this class and the teacher was ready to take me on. And though he knew I would not know the language and I was a foreigner. I did do a couple of pieces because they don't start with drawing. There's no pencil work. You go straight with the brush. And if you're an amateur, can you go straight to the brush? And they use straight brush number 10. How can you make the finer parts of the person's face? They have made me do it on silk because see, they use a rice paper, which is very thin. Okay, and they go straight and their colors are very different. Here, initially we were asked to work with, I think with some color that we were available in India with us. Because later he asked me to get Winston and Newton and he asked me to get Camel and he asked me to get a lot of other things. But there they start with their literally powder paints. And it is with that thick brush that you actually make it, the point tipped and you start with that. And for amateurs or people who are not artists, that is very difficult or not possible. Okay, then their proportion is haywire. I mean, my sense of proportion had come from him. So I had something and I keep saying, no, not this, no. I'll shake my head to make them understand that. However, their equipment is very different. They use an ink stick, they use a slate, they use a water dropper, they use different brushes, and my flat brush is from there. When I showed all this to Professor Singhal, he used the black stick to make me make a wash painting. And it really did turn out beautiful. It really turned out beautiful. Our composition was very, and see, when he understood me, he would never ask me to do what everyone was doing. That was a girl standing with a book in her hand near a tree. Okay, so very naturally, it was very different. And it worked out. The black ink was, I mean, I still probably have that ink bar somewhere. I don't know where it is, but it is there in my place. And the ink bar, we had to scrape it on that slate and use it. And still he said, no, let's try it out. Why can't we use it? And I found that very ingenuous of him to try it out. And then, I mean, it was his encouragement. I would have never tried it. That was my experience with South Korea and art. I was on another year scholarship in the middle of my classes in UK and the University of Leeds, where again, we were given all choices of places we wanted to visit because that was a British Council scholarship. So I went to all the art galleries. Let me tell you, I found no equivalent work anywhere. All the art galleries of UK I've been to, and there was no equivalent work. Why? Theirs doesn't seem to have the coloring concept that Professor Singhal used. Then their concept of proportion is also slightly different. Their concept of proportion, their concept of what he told me was beauty and the philosophy behind beauty. I have read a lot of books which deal with beauty too, but his concept was a vision of his own. That was his vision of what beautiful is. Because I know I had one very awkward question to him. I said, after everything, and you, sort of putting that wash, which sort of, brings in a balance within everything. Yet at the end, you do make us with a very fine light line over the body. Why do you do that? Especially the parts of the body that you can still see. Why do we do that? It makes no sense to me. He said, that's a question I'll answer tomorrow, but that tomorrow never came. Okay, so I have no answer to that question. And there was another thing which I finally could not understand. Maybe my brain didn't take it that far, couldn't take it. And that was he did a shading after when completing the painting. He did a light and dark shading. And he says the light comes from one side. That I could never understand till today. And no one else has talked to me about it. And I've read it nowhere in any book as yet. That is probably his concept. And maybe he thought I would not understand it. That's why he didn't repeat it to me. You probably need a stage of maturity for certain things. And that stage of maturity he recognized in us. which was very important. And at the end of the day, tell me, do I have to understand everything? No.
Yeah. So the wash technique that he used to do, that was he evolved a lot of he did a lot of work, and it was a sort of his unique technique. I don't think so many people know about this, and it is our effort to,
anyone uses it. Even many people knowing, they don't even use it. I have not yet to see an artist using this technique. I have a lot of colleagues who have done graduation in art and come to teach art, or done post-graduation with art. They have not heard of these things. Because, you may not do exactly the same thing, but what happens, your, artistic tendencies remain. Mm-hmm. Because in my case too, I mean, I know my college gave me something to do, and they told me make 60 artistic things for the 60 teachers. And I was like stumped. But the color combination, the method of doing it was naturally in my mind somewhere. So I could handle it. I mean, in fact, everyone was surprised. And of course, behind my back, I knew who I was thanking. That because naturally where you've learned this. And if you have imbibed something, assimilated something with association, it may have become a part of me now. But the fact is, I can't help it. I can't say I've stolen it from him. It's become a part of me now. I can't do anything. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you so much.
No, that is totally fine. I got to learn a lot from hearing to your, the experiences that you have shared. That was a learning experience for me. So I really hope, this art reaches out to everyone, and his techniques, his unique work, people know about him. And I really hope it proves to be useful and informative for everyone. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure,
Thank you very much
to
for
have you and to hear you. Namaste to everyone with best wishes.
Thank you very much.